When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Grease Comedy channel. Today's video, we are going to be talking about the Forsaken Winds of Winter sample chapter that we get from Aeron Damphair. Thank you guys for correcting me on that in one of the other videos I did. But this video is, again, going to be another one of our Halloween week videos. It just makes sense, given that this is probably, not even probably, is the darkest chapter of all of A Song of Ice and Fire. The tones are extremely dark. What happens to our main character in this chapter is extremely dark. Things we learn about the past in this chapter. Everything in this chapter is really surrounded in dark mystery and a lot of foreboding for what is to happen in the future to books. And so I thought it made a lot of sense to kind of talk about this chapter and go through it, because I haven't really done it on this chapter. It's actually been quite a while since I've read it myself. I read it last night, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about some of the meanings, some of the impact it's going to have on Winds of Winter and all of that. And before we get into the video, give me your guys' thoughts on the Forsaken chapter and what do you think its impact is going to be on the story. But before we get into the video, if you guys would like to learn more about A Song of Ice and Fire, or you just enjoy listening to this style of content, consider subscribing, and let's get into the video. So this chapter is really a catch-up of Aeron Damphair's whole arc, right after A Feast for Crows, because it's very weird as we don't really get anything with this character after the midpoint of Feast, right? He's introduced as a POV in the second chapter of Feast for Crows, and then we get him later on with Euron, Victarion, and Asha vying for the Seastone throne. So we get all of that, right? And then he just kind of disappears, right? And we still have the other Greyjoys, right? We have Victarion. We see how Euron is progressing in his story, but Aeron almost disappears from the story completely. So this chapter really is about what happened, right? Like what happened in that period where Euron was taking the shields, where Victarion was being sent to Meereen. Where was Aeron during all of this? And so we catch up with Aeron, and he's in a very bad state, right? He's been imprisoned, and he notes that, again, he's being starved. The water is just coming up enough to where it hurts all of his wounds, makes him sore all over. And this chapter is really about questioning the gods, questioning religious beliefs that Aeron has. And even through all of it, all the suffering he's going through, everything that's maybe showing that the drowned god is not really helping him or there for him at this moment, it's put to the test for Aeron. And this is just a dark chapter, because it's almost like we're basically inside the torture, right? Where we don't see Theon's torture by Ramsay, but in this, we really do. We see what Aeron's going through. We see that, again, Euron constantly comes to visit Aeron to taunt him, to forces him to drink shade of the evening, giving him these awful visions of Euron becoming this kraken-like creature and the carnage that will come because of Euron's conquest, of him sitting on the Iron Throne with this almost shadowy queen, which could be many different characters. It's a very dark chapter. We get some undertones that possibly Euron was heavily involved in possibly sexually assaulting and or raping his brother. Very weird, and it even builds more on the background of Aeron, right? If this is what he was going through, no wonder he became kind of an alcoholic, and he went down this bad route because of the trauma he experienced when he was younger. We, finally learn here that Euron was, again, involved in killing of 3 of his siblings, right? Where he confirms that, yeah, he had a hand in killing his brother Balon. There's a lot of things that come to light in this chapter, but it's all through a dark tone, right? And it makes you kind of understand Euron a bit more, whereas Victarion does, to an extent, give us more information about Euron. This chapter really establishes what Euron's motivations are. Some of the things that probably messed him up. We already have this idea that he could have been a failed student of Bloodravens, which could have really fucked him up from a young age. We also have this idea that he possibly went to Valyria, and we know that Valyria is cursed, so how has that affected Euron's brain? But Euron is someone that is rejecting all of the religions, all of the gods. We have in this vision that Aeron has where all of the gods have been thrown down, whether that be the drowned god, R'hllor, the Seven, the old gods. They've all been thrown down, and that Euron, it seems like, is trying to make himself a god, or at least to show that he does not care about them, right? He's okay with kinslaying. He's done all of these horrible things, but yet nothing bad has happened to him. Nobody has killed him. He's not had punishment for his actions. It shows a lot about what motivates and who Euron is as a person. And so we even get to how cruel Euron, and we've seen this again with Tyrion chapters where all of Euron's gifts are poisoned. And we even see this with the Salt Wife that he had on the Shield Islands. I don't remember her name exactly, but more or less, it's, you know, it's all these promises that he's going to make her his Salt Wife, and she's going to live very lavishly. And by the end of this chapter, she has her tongue removed. She looks like she's been beaten. And she's put on the boat on the front right there with Aeron. And you get really this idea that Euron is doing some sort of mass blood sacrifice. That he seems like he's trying to awaken old powers. And we even see one of those things that I think is really interesting here is that Euron says that, again, he is above these gods and all of these things, that they won't hurt him, all these things. But yet we get some of his own, like, captains talking about how they are pleasing the drowned god more than Aeron is because they are feeding thousands of men to the drowned god. Because, again, getting in these battles, all the men that are going to be dying and drowning. It's an interesting idea here. Like, we see the one thing that appeases the gods in this world is death, is blood sacrifices. If you think about, for instance, Dany and the Awakening of the Dragons, if you kind of think about any of the stuff with R'hllor, it usually has a lot to do with sacrifice, death. We think about Melisandre specifically. And so a lot of this chapter really seems to be pointing towards this idea of Euron trying to ascend, right? Either he's trying to get this monster, this Kraken creature or something, or is he going to enhance himself, gain powers? And we see with his Valyrian armor, which is unheard of in all of the world, it paints this really intimidating image of Euron and the plague and the apocalypse that he is going to cause on the world. And when we see this major blood sacrifice, if he does awaken Krakens, or maybe he gets Dany's dragon, and you combine that with him maybe bringing down the wall with the Horn of Winter, it's just a very foreboding chapter for the impact we'll have on Winds of Winter. And this, for me, kind of spells the doom for Aeron. I don't see how he gets out of it. I think this will be maybe not his last chapter. He might have one more chapter after this in Winds of Winter if George doesn't change this sample chapter, which I hope he doesn't. It's one of the really best chapters, I think, of the entire series. And it's even more interesting when you see that Aeron is so broken at this point that he would rather die. He's kind of gotten to this point with, like, how Theon is, where he would kind of rather die than be captured or sent back to Ramsay. That's kind of how Aeron is, right? He constantly taunts Euron, trying to get him to kill him, and it doesn't work, right? Because Euron has this underlying idea where all of these religious people, so for instance, Aeron to represent the drowned god, he is a priest of R'hllor, he has these sorcerers, right? He's going to sacrifice all of these people, hoping to awaken the power of the gods. And it's just very interesting the way Euron goes about manipulating people and how he gains people's trust while then using them. It really points to that idea of his smiling eye. And I just enjoy this chapter, the dynamic it gives us for Euron going forward, how he would be able to even charm someone, say, like, if Cersei does try to make an alliance with Euron, if maybe she escapes King's Landing and goes to the Westerlands and Casterly Rock, maybe she is this kind of shadow queen that Aeron had seen. It's a lot of interesting things, but let me know what you guys thought. Just, again, a shorter video. I didn't want to go full out on this one because I'm going to be putting out 5 videos this week. I just don't have time to go full out chat or page by page. Just giving you guys the overarching, points of this chapter and the themes going forward that I really find fascinating for the character of Euron. But thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.